Hey guys, DM Scotty here. Good to have you with me. I'm going to do another episode of Spellcraft. I want to show how to make ice storm markers, permanent markers for your game. So when your wizard casts their ice storm, you can have the area marked out on the map or on your tiles. A lot of people ask me about spell effects and questions and everything. They're just the gridless system is just confusing people as far as spell effects. It's just like anything else. So you move, you just mark the area, and I'll show you how to do that at the end of this video after we make the spell markers. But I also want to talk about something else. That is start to have a box of junk, basically, stuff that you see that might be useful in a craft. Now for this craft, I'm going to use this little garland of icicles that I bought at a dollar store. I saw this and I was like, oh, there's some cool shapes on there. I'm sure I can do something with that. When I bought this, I had no idea what I was going to do with it, but I love the shapes and it was only $1. So I threw it in my junk box, and lo and behold, now it is going to be my ice storm markers. So be on the lookout for stuff like this. Old toys or bits of junk that might have an interesting shape that you feel you can use for something. So yeah, as a crafter, you want to start that. Just start a junk bin that you can throw stuff that looks interesting that you might use at some point. And then if you're racking your brain for an idea, trying to think of something, you're like, oh yeah. Or every once in a while, go through your junk bin and say, oh, I had these in there and I can use these for something. So kind of a good habit to get into as a crafter. And let's move on to the crafting of the markers for the ice storm. To make these markers, I need a base. And what I'm going to use for the base is some thick cardstock. Now, actually what this cardstock is, it's the card off the back of a notepad. So it's pretty thick cardstock, and that'll be perfect for our base. Now, I need perfect circles, so an easy way to do that is just use a quarter. The quarter is the perfect size, so I'll just hold that down, trace around it, and then I'll just keep doing that. So there we go. I want to make 8 of those circles, and then I'll cut them out, and that will be our base. To give a dramatic effect, I want to have some ice crystals popping up from the base. And what I'm going to use is this garland of icicles that I bought from a dollar store around the holidays. I thought they looked cool, so I thought, oh, I'll buy this and put it in my junk box, and sometime I might need it. Well, now's the time. So I'm going to use these to make ice jutting out from each base. So I've got my piece and I need to make this usable for what I'm going to do with it. So what I'm going to do is start cutting these off. So I'll just take my scissors, and these are all connected by a string, so I'll just start cutting these off. Okay, I've got enough to start. So what I've got is these little pieces of plastic have the string going through them, and the bottom is rounded, which I don't want. I want it to stick better into the hot glue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these and just a little wire cutter, and I'm going to cut just above where that string is. And this is just cheap plastic, so I'll take that right off. And so then I'll just start hitting them all. So I've got my disc, one of the discs I cut out, and I got my 3 pieces that I cut the bottoms off. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a nice glob of hot glue in the center there. I'm going to stick these pieces in. You'll have to hold that a minute till it sets. All right, so I've got my base with the ice sticking out of it. And I'll let that set a little more, and then I'll move on to the next step. Now that that's dried, I can pick it up easily. And I'm going to use the hot glue gun again. And I'm going to add a little bit of texture to this base, similar to what I do for the cave tiles on the walls. So I'm just going to squirt a little glue in the center, and then just kind of pull out from the center there. And I'll just add a little bit of varied texture to the base, just like it does for the cave walls. Okay, so I got all that on. So I'll see if you can see a little bit there. Now I've got some strings hanging off of it and everything, but you can see it has some varied texture on the base. So my next step, what I'm going to do is I'm going to base paint this, but instead of black like I normally do, this is one of those exceptions, I'm going to base paint it white with a flat white paint. So I'll do that and then we'll come back. Here's my base painted base front and center. So I've got the ice shards coming out, and then I've got the base, the textured base. So it's all painted white. So what I'm going to do is I want to kind of give it like an ice look. So what I'm going to do is use a blue paint called a Caribbean, and it's almost an aqua blue. And I'm going to get my brush very wet. So there, I've got very wet there. Now I'm going to apply that to the base. And right now it's going to seem too blue, but that's fine because we'll add some more white to it. So there we go. So we'll let that dry, and then we'll move on. Now, if I was doing all these at once, I'm just showing you one base, but ideally you want to paint all the bases at the same time. So you do the stage for each base at the same time. That way, it's kind of like an assembly line. Okay, so we'll let that dry and wait, and then go to the next step. Here's our little marker base. It's looking pretty blue right now, but it is dry. So our next step is going to be, I'm going to dry brush it. So I'm just going to take the brush and not wet it, use it dry, and just get some white paint on the brush. And then I will start gently painting. The whites is a very thin color, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint it on there. I'll let that dry a little bit and then paint some more white on. Now here's our base. Now one thing we can do to add a little bit of extra oomph to this is you can use some pearlescent paint, and this is a very thin paint. It just adds kind of a sheen, a sparkly sheen to an object. There's not really, they're very teeny sparkles. It's not like a glitter type thing, but it adds a nice sheen to things, so which would be good for this since it's supposed to be ice. So we'll get some on the, just paint it right on. It's very thin, so it doesn't really color the object much, it just adds that sheen. So here we go, take a look at that. So now we'll do the other markers, and then I'll set up a little demonstration to show how you would use them. We have our characters here exploring an ancient crypt, and as they start to poke around, some zombies begin to shamble in the room, and they come in. So the wizard decides to unleash an ice storm, and he's kind of blocked from this statue in the center of the room from where he wants to see, so he decides to move a little bit. So I'll move him over here, and he casts Ice Storm. So what I'm going to do is have the, he wants to put the center, I'll use one piece for the center of the ice storm. So it can be up to 20 squares away, and it's a 3 radius from the storm. So this is how we would measure, a lot of people have asked how you would measure something like this, and I'm going to show you. So the wizard has a 20 range, and that's easily within range. And so I'm going to rule that he can see. So he wants to give as much area to slow down the zombies as possible. So he going to put it there. And so anywhere 3 out from that will be the radius of the storm. So I'll do 3 out here, and then 3 out here, and then 3 here, 3 here, and then it's going to kind of land on that. So I'm going to put that here. So it's kind of the middle of the statue there. So this radius here, and a circular radius around this, would be where the ice storm would be. So anybody that moves into that, these initial zombies are hit, and anybody else who moves into that would be in the zone of effect. So that's that's how you measure spells. It's very easy to do. I didn't use some special template or anything crazy. I just measured from the point of the blast, where the blast started, out the radius out to all the different points. And now these other points would be basically out of the room, so I didn't put them down, but I have 2 more, so it'd be like kind of like that. So you want to make enough points that you can easily show the circle of what the blast effect would be. Something like a fireball, of course, you don't need to do this because it hits and explodes and then it's done. Well, with the ice storm, it stays as a area of difficult terrain, so you want to be able to mark that And you can use glass beads or something like that. But it's just fun to make these kind of spell effects for your wizards, because it just adds visual interest to the game and makes the wizard very excited to cast their spells. So that's what it looks like, and see you next time on the DM's Craft.